Instead of merging equity, we have thought about how do we create a Bitcoin Treasury Alliance where you can deposit your Bitcoin into a shared pool of collateral where you have an independent board that issue products based on your collateral. And that way you can access over 300,000 Bitcoin that sits in balance sheets that are not currently having any credit products, for example. So this is a way we can accomplish scale and be at least equally attractive as the big firms that has these big balance sheets on their own. And you can create that as an alliance and a product that help the smaller ones accomplish exactly the same as the bigger ones.
How many chairs are you sitting on right now?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Chair Podcast. None of what you will hear is financial advice, and this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. So we had Sander Andersen, Executive Chairman and co-founder of H100 on the show. We talked about the different initiatives that H100 is working on, Sander's concept of collaboration or alliance for Bitcoin Treasury companies, and much more. So here's my conversation with Sander. Hi, Sander. Welcome to the One Chair Podcast. Pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me, Eve. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. We like to start the conversation with a question, which is how you got involved into Bitcoin and how that led you to the Bitcoin Treasury space.
Yeah, so I started quite early. I'm 29 today, but I started my first company when I was 17. My childhood, I spent most of my time in a swimming pool as a competitive swimmer. So that took me to the digital health space quite quickly as an entrepreneur. And then we did a lot of things on social media, and I found crypto back in 27. In 2020, I decided to go full time into the space. And I think as many Bitcoiners, you start with crypto and you end with Bitcoin. So when I moved to Switzerland in 2022, we created an idea and a company today called FinPeers, where the whole goal was to do syndication of deals that ended up being a dedicated family office community investing into Bitcoin strategies. And that was the beginning also of H100 and how we met many of the investors that are currently involved in H100. So I gradually ended up being a Bitcoiner. And I think the pivotal moment for me was when I got my first son. I started thinking about, okay, what has value? What world do I want to give to him? And how should I now spend my time when I have less hours per day to focus on work? So I gradually ended up as a Bitcoiner, and today I spend all my time on working on how to finance Bitcoin and how to build Bitcoin investments as attractive as possible for as broad set of investors as possible.
No, that's great. I think there's a lot of Bitcoiners that go through the journey that you mentioned through the crypto, and then they stumble on different things that probably shifts their perception towards Bitcoin, and they end up Bitcoin maxis. So that's great to hear. And yeah, exactly about the H100. So you mentioned exactly it has its roots in the HealthTech innovation space. So how did it come that you pivoted to or not pivoted, but added the Bitcoin Treasury strategy to it?
Yeah, so again, we have since 2022 worked with family offices and looked into different Bitcoin investments. And when we saw MetaPlanet in 2024, we quickly understood that this is going to happen all around the world. And we started thinking, okay, what's our role in this? And we decided to list one of my HealthTech firms and take that public in the Nordics. I'm from Norway, but we believe Sweden has the best capital markets in the Nordics. So we decided to do a reverse takeover in Sweden, and with a long-term plan of making that Bitcoin accumulation vehicle, similar to what MetaPlanet had done in Japan. And that was basically the story. The HealthTech firm was a firm I have owned for quite some time. It needed some new innovation, and we think that Bitcoin Treasury strategy was perfect for that specific company. That being said, we are now gradually more and more Bitcoin focused. We believe these companies will be the infrastructure of the new financial world, and we think that's a very, very interesting model to explore more. So today, these vehicles or entities, health and Bitcoin, is run by an independent management team.
Yeah, and about the health aspect to it, you intend to keep it as part of the company, right? You're not planning to do anything with it, like a spin-off or anything like that.
Can't tell too much about that due to the regulatory environment we are in, but I can say that we have two dedicated teams running each and separate strategy, where I'm mostly focused on the Bitcoin side of things, and we are very, very optimistic that these Bitcoin treasury companies will play an important role as an infrastructure provider and capital allocator to Bitcoin going forward. And we think that is in itself a very, very attractive model that we work on every day.
That's great. And so you mentioned exactly you're focusing on this Bitcoin treasury aspect to the company. Maybe can you walk us through the different initiatives that you have going on? I know you have a lot that you've been working on through the bear market, and that's probably the best time to build on when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, bear market is where the value is created, and bull markets, that's when people see what you have built. So we are incredibly focused on building the business model of this Bitcoin treasury companies. We are strong believers that Bitcoin treasury companies are having one purpose, which are accumulate as much Bitcoin you can, and eventually also allocate the Bitcoin to where it's profitable for the shareholder. That could be, I'm a little bit careful by saying it, but that could be yield in different ways. I don't necessarily agree that the yield strategies today is the best one, but I'm pretty certain that it's going to happen, and some great products will be available. On the other side, you of course have credit and get to this amplified Bitcoin scale. So where H100 is focused on is we are doing one thing, and we work with Bitcoiners and Bitcoiners that want more Bitcoin and believe in our strategy to allocate to Bitcoin strategies with different types of risk profiles. 70% of our capital was raised through convertible bonds. And what we saw with convertible bonds was that they provided a certain amount of security on the downside protection. And you can do that in fiat, you can do that in Bitcoin. But you still had this opportunity to basically get a premium to your Bitcoin if we executed the right way. So you had this equity kicker, but you also had downside protection, and 70% roughly of that capital came from a product like that. So what we now are focusing on is how do we create products that are not necessarily always tied to our equity or our credit, but also in a more collaborative way. We have publicly stated that we are looking into instead of merging equity, we believe consolidation in the industry is important. But instead of merging equity, we have thought about how do we create a Bitcoin Treasury Alliance where you can deposit your Bitcoin into a shared pool of collateral where you have an independent board that issue products based on your collateral. And that way you can access over 300,000 Bitcoin that sits in balance sheets that are not currently having any credit products, for example. So this is a way we can accomplish scale and be at least equally attractive as the big firms that has these big balance sheets on their own. And you can create that as an alliance and a product that help the smaller ones accomplish exactly the same as the bigger ones. Because these are non-dilutive instruments, but you still need to pay the interest rates, you still need to have liquidity, you still need to have the credit rating. And we believe in a shared infrastructure that could be more attractive. On top of that, the latest one we also have done was to sign an LOI with Future Holdings, which is a Swiss Bitcoin Treasury company that wasn't able to list. We believe we have all the criteria to list in Switzerland, so we saw that as an opportunity to buy a one-stop shop for entering the Swiss market. So we also have looked deeply into the M&A space. We think consolidation is important. And then now we will see what type of products and services we can offer investors based on our equity, our depth, and also the collaborative effort we are putting into them.
That's a lot of initiatives. As you pointed out, scale is an important factor for those products, and here mostly thinking about the perpetual preferreds that Strategy, Strive, and now MetaPlanet have brought out. I suspect these are the products that you're looking at when you're talking about the scale aspect, right?
Yeah, I mean, we are from the Nordics, and in the Nordics we have a quite collaborative mindset. And what I see now is a lot of smaller companies that wants to accomplish the same with this preferred product. But the solution, in my opinion, is to just pool, because we have so many ways of doing segregated custody, bankruptcy remote vehicles. It doesn't necessarily need to put your Bitcoin at an additional risk to accomplish this. But if we collaborate, you can accomplish that scale and that basically centralized sales force to be able to get into the right room and scale a product like this, even if you are not able to raise that equity for now. But I believe if you can accomplish that, you will have a more attractive equity and you will have all the tools and the flywheel available again to basically accumulate more Bitcoin and accomplish Bitcoin yield on your own equity. So for me, this creates an opportunity for the best of two worlds. We are not live yet, and we are definitely a little bit. We still have a lot of work to do to figuring out how. But as a mental model, I believe this collaborative alliance could solve a lot of the issues we have from a credit perspective, and how do we attract institutional capital because of size. And you can do that with this one, but on the other side, you keep your equity, and you can still create a very attractive Bitcoin yield story for all your equity shareholders.
And I think this collaborative concept is very fascinating. And as far as I know, you're the only person that I've heard talk about it. I haven't heard this from any other Bitcoin treasury, without mentioning names or anything. Are there already talks about it in the space, or are you talking to people about it?
Yeah, we have some very interesting discussion going with both smaller and some larger Bitcoin treasury companies. But more importantly, we also have validated the idea, talking to institutional investors and ask them, what do you need? And what they need is scale, because they love this credit product. Not everyone wants to hedge, like with Sailor's product, in dollars or euro. For example, the Swiss market are yield starved. So for us, it makes a lot of sense to look at these opportunities in a collaborative way, because we know that's what the institutions want to see. If you can go into an institution and say, hey, we have 10,000 Bitcoin of collateral, it's way easier to do that compared to 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000. So we already have this dialogue. It's quite a work to figuring out the governance a model. It's quite a model to understand, okay, how do we pay for this? What's the business model? Is it free for the first 20, 30, 40, and then it's cost something? What's the incentive? And then we look to like Star Alliance for in the travel industry, where each individual travel company focus on their own equity, but they're still part of this collaborative infrastructure that helps them provide better services to their customer. So a lot of work to be done, but that's definitely something we are now out in the market and testing on who can help us issue the pref, who can be the collateral, and who can be the investor. And if H100 can play that critical infrastructure role, I think we will lift the whole industry. It's definitely the solution the industry needs to see to gain back the trust and say, hey, you don't need to be only strategy or the one that are only 10,000 and above. You can actually find new ways and innovative ways for those that has 50 Bitcoin on their balance sheet and all the way up to 50,000, who knows? But they can all join the same shared pool of collateral and accomplish exactly the same. So that's for us seems to be a way to show that we are innovative and we can solve problems as an industry quicker than most other can do.
I think it completely makes sense. And as you mentioned, it's a win-win type of situation where everybody just has something to win about this. And here, a question that I would have is, are you looking only at publicly traded companies, or are there also private equities? Because you also have companies that hold Bitcoin that are just not listed, right?
That's the exact idea we have, because a lot of people want to accomplish amplified Bitcoin. That's true for public companies, that's true for private companies, that's true for individuals, family offices. So if you have a structure where you can pledge your Bitcoin to accomplish this, where you are part of a bigger pool, you can pledge your Bitcoin whoever you are. The liquidity will be in the separate entity. It will be, of course, listed as a separate product. So you will have so much more flexibility and maybe a secondary market if you want to go in and out. So you can create this new product that I haven't seen been done in the market before. And other than, of course, you have Euroclear, you have Star Alliance, you have different infrastructure, shared infrastructure projects, but I haven't seen this in a public market yet, or at least not that I'm aware of. And it's very in the Bitcoin ethos to do collaborative effort to help the industry grow. So yeah, I'm quite happy that we are here. I'm quite motivated to keep pushing this product in the market, and I think this is the solution for many Bitcoin treasury companies. And also other Bitcoin companies that wants to pledge their Bitcoin to accomplish what has been before this product been very hard without scale.
No, that's again a very fascinating concept, and I guess as you go through the journey, I will be looking forward to it, because I believe, as you mentioned, there's probably a lot of things that you need to figure out: custody, governance, as you already pointed out, and then obviously because we're in Europe, for example, we have a lot of Bitcoin treasuries, but they're all in different jurisdictions, which means different fiat denominations and all of this. So I guess the complexity gets a little bit tough there.
Yeah, but the beauty of the model is that you deposit a certain amount of Bitcoin, you pledge it to the structure, and then you get pro rata Bitcoin yield based on the stack you own, right? So you don't need to measure things in Swedish kroner or euro. You will get one Bitcoin will give you 1 point something Bitcoin in amplified Bitcoin on top. And we try to accomplish the same trading dynamic, liquidity, credit rating. So most of the interest rates will be paid for within the vehicle. That's maybe one of the biggest challenges, is how do you pay for the interest rates? Because if you can create a product that pays 10 to 12% annually, that's a product that most private individuals in the world needs. They just don't know it yet. So it's not only solving a problem for the Bitcoin treasury companies, it's actually solving a huge problem in how do I actually save and protect my money. And this is a great fiat product backed by Bitcoin, which we believe will be very, very important for actually humanity and society going forward.
So moving here a little bit back to what you mentioned on the futures holding LOI that you have going. Can you deep dive a little bit more into the acquisition?
Yeah, so I've been based out of Lugano the last 3 years. I'm very much of the belief that Switzerland is the best place to build in Europe. It has the most crypto-friendly government and regulatory environment. And it also has, in my opinion, the banking infrastructure and talents to build what I believe is the future of Bitcoin treasury companies. We see Bitcoin as a commodity that have multiple use cases. And I believe that the Nordic commodity history merging with Swiss banking history, meeting in the middle there, I believe is maybe the business model of the future for Bitcoin treasury companies. So Future was a Bitcoin treasury company that wanted to list on SIX, and they were not able to list due to a few requirements that I believe we have, which is operational track record. And so for us, this opens up an opportunity to enter the Swiss market incredibly fast. But we are also in the negotiation now to look into what type of, or who do we want to be part of that team? Is it any specific knowledge in the team that we think is important for H100 to build an institutional level company that can attract a lot of capital, that can create this alliance and have the necessary financial expertise on top of where we believe we are quite strong, which is in network building and investor relationship and capital markets. So those two together, we believe could be a very, very interesting dynamic. And that's also why we decided to go for it. And to be clear, it's still, it's most of the money is returned to the shareholders. So it's no Bitcoin in the company, but we do it for the infrastructure. And we do it for the potential for acceleration by having this infrastructure. It makes the deal very attractive for H100.
And potentially also tapping into different two pools as well, because you have H100 in Sweden. Now you have an entity also that potentially could be publicly listed in Switzerland. And it's one of the big hubs also in terms of capital markets, as you pointed out.
Yeah, or we do dual listing with H100 in Switzerland.
That's also the beauty of it. You have optionality on many fronts on what you can do. So that's great, especially as a Swiss. I love to see this. Maybe moving to a different topic, how you see a little bit the market, because obviously we've had a brutal market right now. Probably a lot of people didn't expect it to go that way. How do you see the landscape for the Bitcoin treasuries moving forward for this year and potentially beyond?
2025 was a year with a lot of expectations that never happened. I think we got most of what we wished for from a few years back with institutional adoption. The ETFs was buying. All the banks are starting to think and execute on it. Many of the big financial leaders in the world has done a 180 on their Bitcoin and in some cases also crypto. Now we're talking about the future will be tokenized. Everything we in the industry has hoped for quite some time, but we never saw the typical blowout on top of the cycle, 4-year cycle last year. So it was a lot of pessimism at the end of the year where we ended with a negative return on Bitcoin. And then I think the psychology is often very strong in the market, and I think a lot of OGs and a lot of Bitcoiners has sold, and we have seen that with the ETFs are not so much impacted. It's only 7% of outflow in the ETFs, but most of the liquidity or sell pressure comes from more traditional ways of buying Bitcoin. And it seems that the psychology is so strong that people are scared about the 4-year cycle, which I believe has high relevance when it comes to the psychology of the market, but in all practicalities and doesn't matter much. And now we are back at 66K. Most Bitcoin Treasury companies accumulated at a higher price. Even Strategy with a multi-year strategy are now more or less at the buying levels. So I think now over the next year, most Bitcoin Treasury companies will, or first of all, they have enough cash to work for the next two to 3 years. But most of them, I believe, will find their own business model and their own way of capitalizing on not only the balance sheet, but also the network and the knowledge in the management team going forward. So I believe that Bitcoin is a commodity, and we will be similar to the oil is a commodity. You will have oil companies on top of it that takes that oil, which is an energy battery, and pump it up and create products with it. For me, Bitcoin is a monetary battery that you need to do stuff with. That could be like Sander is doing with the credit, and how like the 1600 banks was creating banks on top of gold. I think we'll see an incredible innovation and progress with very cash efficient business model, capitalizing on the network and infrastructure that are already developed. And this will eventually give you a Bitcoin yield, which are operational driven. And I think we're now entering the Bitcoin Treasury 2.0 market, and that's when we will see new business models popping up. And some will pivot, but I think those that has the main KPI as increasing Bitcoin per share over time, I think will do incredibly well, because I think they will find their own way and how to accumulate, how to structure products. And Bitcoin at 60K is a buying opportunity. All historical data says that when you have these technical indicators, you have the fear in the market, this is a good buying opportunity. So I think when the market turns now, all the banks are ready, all the ETFs are ready, we will see an incredible new run. And on top of the geopolitical situation we are in now and the lack of trust in the US government, for me, it's only one asset class that makes a lot of sense where you should park your money, and that's Bitcoin. If you gold is fine, but it's still mostly governed by government. And if you believe that the government is part of the problem, you need a geopolitical neutral technology and store of value, which will eventually be the most efficient collateral in the world, and how you access credit all around the world. And Bitcoin will come back. So I'm highly optimistic about the future. And I think this drawdown increased the focus of those management teams that were already dedicated and had their vision and mission clear.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to see the comeback on Bitcoin, because talking to various people in the space, it feels like all the Bitcoin treasury companies, for example, have been building during the bear market, as we already mentioned. So when Bitcoin starts coming back, I believe that the Bitcoin treasuries, or some of them, will be ready to start really accumulating and having the engines back on. on top of the macro that is already happening. So I'm really curious how this time Bitcoin reacts when the comeback comes with all these institutional investors. And you also mentioned another thing with the Bank of England, and I've heard you mention it a couple of times in other podcasts as well, and you mention it as being the financial rail, the Bitcoin treasuries being the financial rails. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on this idea?
Yes. So how it worked early in the banking world was that you deposit your gold, and the gold gave you some credit or some savings product. And I think Salaries already started tapping into this idea. I give you cash equal to Bitcoin, and you give me fiat and a saving product back. So I deposit my Bitcoin and I get a fiat back. So this is like the very early beginning of a Bitcoin bank-like activity. And I believe the biggest opportunity for someone with a lot of Bitcoin in the balance sheet is, how do I access credit against my Bitcoin? And I can start doing banking-like activities to, for example, facilitate loans to Bitcoiners that want to buy a company, they want to buy a house, and they want to take their great store of value and turn it into productive capital. I don't think you do that by selling your Bitcoin. I think you put Bitcoin into credit structures to, one, solve the big credit problem we have worldwide, and two, you serve $1 trillion of wealth in Bitcoin that has a tendency to not sell because you believe it's going to be a great investment for the future. So you will have Bitcoin as collateral. That collateral will access credit. If you're big, you will get cheaper credit, and therefore you can resell the credit to the Bitcoiners and give them better terms when they want to buy things that are significant for them, meaning houses, meaning companies, whatever it is. And where I'm particularly interested in is how you can structure Bitcoin into private credit deals. Meaning, if I'm worth $1 billion in Bitcoin today, I can't buy anything because I don't want to sell my Bitcoin. So what options do I have? I can go and do a margin loans against it, but it's, first of all, it's not much liquidity there. And second, it's not good with the historical volatility in Bitcoin. If someone is willing to lend you on a 5-year term and 8%, 9%, 10% interest rate, for you to acquire something of value, and I think the first step is cash flow generating businesses, private equity companies, because then you have dual collateralization. You use Bitcoin as a liquid collateral to access fiat capital to buy something that can generate cash flow and serve the debt as well. Meaning you then turn your Bitcoin into a financial powerhouse, and you can see individuals doing that, you can see company doing that, but this is a way of using the collateral and basically creating mortgages against your Bitcoin and the asset you're buying, and turning Bitcoin into the biggest financial players in the world. And for those that want 8%, it's quite a nice deal because you have the Bitcoin there. On top of the Bitcoin, you also have the asset that generates cash flow. And in this way, that package can even make like more boring businesses more interesting. And this might be how we finance the data centers and solar panels and every infrastructure we need to create a modern society. And I hope Bitcoin can be the collateral that accelerate that progress, and Bitcoiners will take part of the equity story and the equity value created in such a progressing world.
We also try to talk a bit about this on the podcast, but just the concept of it is always super interesting. I think of the Bitcoin just being the financial rail for almost anything, really.
Yeah, I think it will start as collateral, and then you will have stablecoin on the same. So you will basically do Bitcoin against stablecoin, because then you can do it worldwide, and then you will have to do tokenized stocks, hopefully on top of liquid or any other Bitcoin infrastructure. That's the future I want to see. I think that's the best possible outcome for us, and how we can use Bitcoin as the currency to build a global financial market where we don't need to see all these corruptions and centralized entity governing all these things. Hopefully we'll see someone having a company register on the moon or on Mars, where we have like one framework that everyone can tap into, rather than doing all these country by country laws. It just make global expansion harder. And it doesn't make much sense in a digital world anymore, because media doesn't work that way. We do all the communication on social media. We do all our personal branding on social media. It doesn't have borders. So why should your company have it when your identity is already global? So it's also like more on a personal interest level, but I think Bitcoin can facilitate so much progress in the society.
And as you mentioned, also, once we have Bitcoin, then obviously it breaks jurisdictions. And right now, obviously, as we transition to this, we still need to abide to the old world's rules, where we have all of these legal compliance frameworks, which are kind of obstacles to all of this. But we need to transition into it. And yeah, I also see a break in the jurisdictions at some point. You're quite active on X and engage regularly with the Bitcoin community. What's the most surprising or unexpected feedback that you have received?
What I love with Bitcoin Treasury companies is that most of them, they went public quite early. They communicated very early. So this was one of the few financial innovation where retail was a big part of it from day one. X is, of course, the main communication channel. I'm incredibly surprised how knowledgeable some of these people are, and what type of advice and feedback they can give you. I just love this collaborative effort of building something together. And so that surprised me the most, is this combined knowledge in a community, how that can be a competitive edge over time. And that's where we are, of course, are incredibly thankful for the community that are there. They, of course, are happy sometimes, and sometimes they disagree with us. And doing that in a public way is, of course, a little bit uncomfortable, but it's surprisingly efficient. I mean, I think about everything. Not only do I need to call some of the major shareholders, I do that as well. But at the end of the day, okay, how will this message be received by the most active members in my community? It doesn't need to be the biggest. It just needs to be those that contributes the most. And it gives you a very long-term perspective, and you think a little bit different when you build companies in public like that. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's definitely my biggest takeaway from building H100 publicly.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I asked the question, because obviously the Bitcoin treasuries have innovated not only on the on the product side with the digital credit aspect, but also on how they communicate with shareholders. And obviously X is a big part of it, but just in general, or just you guys are being on podcasts and just sharing the knowledge amongst not just the investors, but probably amongst themselves. There's probably a lot of things going on that we don't know about, but there's a lot of communication going on that you probably wouldn't see in different industries. I can expect that other industries are more secretive and don't try to collaborate as much. And yeah, it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, 100% agree.
So yeah, as much just before we wrap up, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you believe would be important for listeners to know about Bitcoin treasuries or H100?
No, I think the most important thing now, take care of yourself and your health, especially the mental health. We all know that bear markets can be incredibly tough, but it's an important time to remind yourself that Bitcoin is volatile and will probably be volatile for quite some time. And you should always take care of yourself and your mental health first, and don't try to do anything stupid in these incredibly stressful times when everything feels a little bit tougher than what you maybe expected. So I think that's the main takeaway I want to give away. Take care of your mental health, and if you are here for the next cycle as well, it will happen again, but it will feel much more natural because you have been through it before.
There are some wise words, I think, to share with the community, especially in the times that we're in right now. All right. So where can people find you and H100 online?
So as you said, we are mostly active on X. You find me on my name, Sander Andersen, and H100 under H100 Group. So happy to move the conversation over there.
Thank you so much, Sander.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
How many chairs are you sitting on right now?